Love can arrive at any stage of life. Even when your hair is silvered, when your hands bear the storylines of decades, and when your heart has already known profound loss. But love in our later years carries both joys and fears that younger souls cannot fully comprehend. Have you ever wondered if you would dare to love again after 60, 70, or beyond? When each day becomes increasingly precious, when choosing a companion means potential caregiving, when opening your heart guarantees eventual grief, when the question isn't will we grow old together, but rather which one of us will have to say goodbye first? This reality haunts many seniors contemplating new relationships. Society celebrates young love with its endless horizons and decades of possibilities. But what about love that begins when the road ahead is shorter, when health concerns aren't theoretical future worries but present realities, when children and grandchildren might question your judgment rather than celebrate your joy? Today, we explore a story that cuts the heart of these questions, a love rekindled between two people in their final season of life, and how one phone call transformed everything they thought they knew about courage, time, and the true value of connection. This isn't just a story about loss, but about the profound bravery required to choose love when you can clearly see its inevitable cost. Let's turn back the clock to 1 year ago, when a 75-year-old man attended a dinner at his daughter's home and encountered a familiar face he hadn't seen in over 40 years. They say lightning never strikes the same place twice, but Robert and Martha would beg to differ. Their paths first crossed in 1965 at community college in Michigan, where they shared a literature class and a brief summer romance before life pulled them in different directions. Robert joined the military, and Martha pursued her teaching degree in what might have been faded into the soft haze of youthful memories. For the next 40 years, they lived separate lives. Robert married his high school sweetheart after returning from Vietnam, raised 3 daughters, and built a successful construction business. Martha found love with a fellow teacher, had 2 sons, and spent 30 years shaping young minds in elementary classrooms across Ohio. Both experienced the fullness of middle-class American life, the mortgage payments and birthday parties, the family vacations and career milestones, the arguments that tested their marriages and the reconciliations that strengthened them. Both also knew profound loss. Robert lost his wife, Janet, to breast cancer when he was 68. Martha's husband, Thomas, suffered a fatal heart attack on their 40th wedding anniversary trip. Both navigated the disorienting landscape of grief, learning to live alone after decades of partnership, settling into rhythms that accommodated their solitude without truly filling it. After Thomas died, I rearranged the furniture, Martha told her sister. I couldn't bear all that empty space on the side of the bed, his empty chair at the dining table. I thought changing things would help, but all I did was create a different kind of emptiness. Robert, too, struggled with the echoing silence of his home. I found myself talking out loud just to hear a voice, he admitted to his eldest daughter. I'd announce what I was doing. I'm making coffee now. Time to get the mail. Like Janet could still hear me. Maybe part of me thought she could. Neither was actively looking for love when they found themselves at the same dinner party at Robert's daughter Lisa's home in Columbus. Lisa had become friends with Martha's daughter-in-law through a book club, unaware of the ancient connection between their parents. When Martha arrived carrying her famous blueberry cobbler, she stopped in the doorway, recognition washing over her face like a gentle wave. "Robert?" she said, nearly dropping the dessert. "Robert Miller?" He turned from his conversation, confusion giving way to astonishment. "Martha?" "Martha Williams. No, it's Thompson now, isn't it?" "It was," she said with a soft smile. "It's Green now." Was Green, In that moment, 40 years collapsed like an accordion. They were no longer just 2 silver-haired grandparents in their 70s, but also those young students whose fingers had once intertwined as they sat on the campus lawn, discussing Thoreau and dreaming of futures they couldn't possibly foresee. Their reunion might have remained just a pleasant coincidence, a single evening of reminiscing while their children looked on in amusement. But something sparked between them that neither had felt in years. That singular electricity of finding someone who sees you clearly, who shares references and memories from your formative years, who carries pieces of the same world you once inhabited. Their first proper date was coffee the following week. Robert arrived 15 minutes early, nervously straightening his shirt collar in reflection of the coffee shop window. Martha was precisely on time, wearing earrings that matched her blue cardigan and carrying a small photo album. "I found our old literature class picture," she explained, sliding into the chair across from him. "Look at us. You with that ridiculous mustache, me with that terrible haircut. What were we thinking?" The laughter came easily, as did the conversations that followed. They discovered that grief had shaped them in similar ways. Both had learned to appreciate simple pleasures. Both had developed routines that sustained them through loneliness. Both had come to value directness over pretense. There was no time or energy for the games that often characterize younger relationships. "When you're our age," Robert explained to his skeptical youngest daughter, "you don't waste time pretending to be someone you're not. I know who I am at 75. Martha knows who she is at 68. We've earned every wrinkle, every gray hair, every ache. There's something incredibly liberating about that." Their courtship unfolded with both the caution of experienced hearts and the urgency of those who understand time's precious nature. Weekly coffee dates became dinner outings. Phone calls that once lasted 20 minutes stretched to 2 hours. They exchanged books with notes in the margins, shared family photos and stories, and gradually intertwined their separate worlds. 6 months in, Robert invited Martha to accompany him to his grandson's wedding in Virginia. It would mean sharing a long drive, staying in adjacent hotel rooms, and, most significantly, presenting themselves as a couple to extended family and friends. It marked a turning point in their relationship, an acknowledgement that what had begun as a pleasant reconnection had deepened into something profoundly important to them both. "I was terrified," Martha confessed to her best friend Helen, not of the trip itself, but of what it represented. "At my age, I never expected to feel butterflies again, to worry about what someone thought of me, to care so deeply about a future that might include someone else." The wedding weekend was a revelation. Watching Robert dance with his granddaughter, Martha glimpsed the kind of partner he had been and could be again, attentive, tender, fully present. Observing Martha charm his sometimes difficult sister-in-law, Robert appreciated her emotional intelligence and warmth. They returned home having crossed an invisible threshold, both recognizing that they had found something rare and worthy of protection. "We're not naive romantics," Robert explained to his concerned middle daughter. "We know exactly what we're getting into. We know about each other's health issues, financial situations, and family dynamics. We've had frank discussions about end-of-life care, about our children's concerns, about the statistical reality that one of us will likely bury the other. But we also know that however many years we have left, even if it's only a handful, they'll be richer together than apart." The call came on a Tuesday evening in April. Martha was in her kitchen preparing a casserole to take to Robert's house the next day. They'd fallen into a comfortable routine of trading dinner hosting duties. Her place on Mondays and Thursdays, his on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Sunday lunches were reserved for their respective families, though they'd begun cautiously introducing the idea of combined gatherings. When her phone rang and she saw Robert's name, she answered with a smile in her voice. "I was just thinking about you. I'm making that chicken dish you liked so much last month." The silence on the other end lasted just a beat too long. "Robert, are you there?" "I need to tell you something," he said finally, his voice strangely flat. "I had my follow-up appointment with Dr. Lewis today, about those tests they ran last week." Martha set down the wooden spoon she'd been using to stir. A chill ran through her that had nothing to do with the spring rain pattering against her kitchen window. "The scans show what they suspected," Robert continued, each word measured as if requiring tremendous effort to produce. "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. It's already spread to the liver." Martha gripped the counter edge. In her 70 years of life, she had learned that the worst news often arrives in the simplest packaging. No dramatic music, no slow motion sequence like in the movies. Just ordinary words that suddenly rearrange your entire world. What does that mean exactly?" she asked, though part of her already knew. "It means 6 months. Maybe 8 with aggressive treatment, but not likely more than that." His voice cracked slightly on the last word. Martha's mind raced through memories not yet made. The trip to the Grand Canyon they'd been planning for fall, the Christmas they'd talked about spending together, the spring garden they discussed planting at his house next year. Future tenses suddenly shifting to might have beens. "I'm coming over," she said. "Right now." "You don't have to." "I'm coming over," she repeated, already reaching for her car keys. "Put on some coffee. I'll be there in 20 minutes. That night, sitting at Robert's kitchen table with untouched mugs between them, they had the first of many difficult conversations. Robert, ever the practical builder, laid out the facts as the doctor had presented them: treatment options, success rates, side effects, care facilities, financial considerations, end-of-life decisions. "I want you to know," he said, reaching for her hand across the table, "that I understand completely if this changes things between us." Martha looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "This is what you signed up for," Robert said, his eyes fixed on her joined hands. "When we reconnected, when we started, whatever this is becoming, you've already been a caregiver once. You've already said goodbye to someone you loved. I would never expect you to go through that again, especially after such a short time together." Martha withdrew her hand, anger flashing across her face. "Is that what you think of me? That I would walk away now because it's got hard? Because there's an expiration date? I think," Robert said carefully, "that you deserve better than to hitch your wagon to a dying man. I think you deserve happiness without a looming shadow. I think—" "Stop telling me what I deserve," Martha interrupted. "I'm 68 years old. I know exactly what I deserve, what I want, and what I can handle." She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "The question isn't whether I'm staying. The question is whether you want to stay." In the weeks that followed, this question echoed through both their lives. Robert's adult children reacted to the diagnosis with a mixture of grief and protective determination. His eldest daughter immediately began researching experimental treatments. His middle daughter, a nurse, wanted him to move in with her family. His youngest suggested he sell his house immediately to eliminate maintenance concerns. None of them quite knew how to factor Martha into these plans. Martha's sons were equally uncertain. The older one, Michael, worried openly about her emotional resilience. "Mom, you were just getting back on your feet after Dad. Are you sure you want to set yourself up for more heartbreak?" Her younger son, David, was more direct. "You barely know him, really. Not the man he is now. You shared a summer romance 50 years ago and have been dating for 6 months. That's not much foundation for becoming someone's end-of-life caregiver." Friends expressed similar concerns, often cloaked in gentler language. "It's such a shame, just when you found each other again," her friend Helen said. "No one would blame you if you decided this is too much." Even Robert himself continued to offer exits. "The chemo is going to be ugly," he warned after his first oncology consultation. "I won't be good company. I'll be sick, tired, and probably irritable. You should take some time to really think about what that will mean for you." These well-intentioned concerns crashed against Martha's growing certainty. She had spent enough of her life living according to others' expectations and fears. She had played by the rules, always put her family's needs before her own. She had delayed dreams and swallowed disappointments and made peace with limitations. But this decision was hers alone to make. One evening, after a particularly difficult day when Robert had received more discouraging test results, Martha arrived at his house to find him sitting in the dark. She switched on a lamp and sat beside him on the sofa. "I've been thinking about what everyone keeps saying," she began, "about whether I should protect myself from what's coming." Robert nodded, his face lined with exhaustion and something that looked like resignation. "I realized something today," Martha continued. "All my life, I've been taught that love is about forever, about security and stability, and building something that lasts. That's what makes it valuable." She turned to face him fully. "But that's not quite right, is it? Love isn't valuable because it lasts. It's valuable because of how it changes us while we have it." She took his hand, noticing how the treatments had already begun to thin his skin, making the veins more prominent. "I'm old enough to know that pain is part of love, that they're two sides of the same coin, and I choose both. However long we have, whether it's 6 months or 6 years, I choose both." For the first time since his diagnosis, Robert wept, not the quiet, controlled tears he had shed in the doctor's office, but deep, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from his very core. Martha held him, her own tears falling into his silver hair, both of them finally releasing the tension they'd been carrying. When he could speak again, Robert looked up at her with swollen eyes. "I'm terrified," he admitted. "Not of dying, exactly, but of becoming a burden. Of not being the man you thought you were getting." Martha smiled through her tears. "The man I'm getting is the one who's right here. The one brave enough to be scared with me. The one honest enough to let me see him at his worst and his best." She brushed his hair back from his forehead with gentle fingers. "We don't have time for masks or pretenses. So let's promise each other right now. No hiding. Not from the hard parts, not from the fears, not from any of it." That night marked a turning point. They stopped asking whether they should face this journey together and began figuring out how they would do it. Their relationship, born in the optimism of youth and rekindled in the wisdom of age, now entered a third phase, one defined by a clarity and purpose that only impending loss can bring. With the decision made to face whatever came together, Robert and Martha embarked on a journey neither had anticipated. They created what Robert jokingly called their abbreviated bucket list. Not grand adventures to exotic locations, but meaningful experiences they could realistically enjoy within his diminishing energy and growing limitations. They visited the local botanical garden when spring flowers bloomed, Robert sometimes in a wheelchair on his weaker days. They hosted small dinner parties where their children and grandchildren could spend time together, gradually weaving their separate families into a new tapestry. They spent quiet evenings reading aloud to each other, finishing all of Jane Austen's novels, which Robert had never read and Martha had always loved. "We're compressing decades into months," Martha told her friend Helen. "Not in a frantic way, but in a deliberate one. We're having the conversations most couples spread over the years. We're learning each other's stories all at once instead of gradually. There's a strange gift in that urgency." As spring gave way to summer, Robert's condition deteriorated more rapidly than expected. The aggressive chemotherapy that had initially seemed promising began to fail. His once robust frame grew gaunt, his voice softened, and there were days when even sitting up required monumental effort. Martha adapted with quiet determination. She learned to administer his medications, to help him bathe when his strength failed, to interpret the subtle changes in his breathing that signaled pain he tried to hide. She adjusted her expectations daily, sometimes hourly, remaining flexible when plans had to be canceled or modified. What surprised them both was how their connection deepened, even as Robert's physical presence in the world diminished. Without the luxury of time for misunderstandings or unspoken feelings, they developed a radical honesty that stripped away pretense. "I was never this truthful with Janet," Robert confessed one evening as Martha helped him into bed. "Not because I didn't love her. I loved her deeply for 46 years. But we had the luxury of assuming there would always be time to say the hard things later. We could let sleeping dogs lie." Martha nodded, understanding perfectly. "Thomas and I had entire topics we tacitly agreed to avoid. Little resentments we never addressed because it seemed easier to work around them than through them. But we don't have the luxury of avoidance, do we?" Robert said, his thin fingers finding hers in the dim light. "No," Martha agreed, "and I'm finding there's a strange freedom in that." This freedom manifested in conversations of startling intimacy. They discussed their greatest regrets and proudest moments. They shared secrets they'd kept from previous spouses. They talked about their fears around dying and being left behind. Nothing was too sacred or too mundane to examine together. These conversations became the foundation for 3 profound lessons that Martha would later identify as the gift of their brief but powerful union. The first lesson emerged during a particularly difficult week when Robert's pain became nearly unmanageable. Martha had been up for 3 nights, monitoring his breathing, adjusting his medication, and holding cool cloths to his forehead during fever spikes. When the home health nurse arrived for her weekly check, she found Martha exhausted and tearful. "You need a break," the nurse insisted. "Let me call one of his daughters to step in for a few hours. Go home. Sleep in your own bed." Martha resisted initially, but eventually relented. As she prepared to leave, Robert reached for her hand. "You know what I've learned?" he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Loving takes courage at any age, but especially when you know exactly what it will cost. When Martha returned next morning, rested and renewed, they discussed this insight further. The courage required for their love wasn't the bold, reckless bravery of youth, but clear-eyed valor that fully acknowledged the pain ahead and chose connection anyway. Young love is full of promises, Robert observed. Forever and always, till death do us part. But those words are abstract when you're young. Death is a distant concept. But we know better, Martha added. We know exactly what death looks like, sounds like, smells like. We've been in the room when it happens, and we chose love anyway. That's a different kind of courage. The second lesson crystallized during an impromptu family gathering in August. Robert's condition had stabilized temporarily, offering a good day among many difficult ones. Both their families came together for a backyard barbecue. Children, grandchildren, even Robert's sister from Florida and Martha's brother from Chicago. As the evening wound down, Martha found Robert watching the scene from his cushioned chair, a small smile playing on his lips. "What are you thinking?" she asked, settling beside him. "I'm thinking about value," he replied, "about how we measure the worth of things, especially relationships." Later that night, he elaborated, "All my life, I've measured success in duration. A successful business was one that lasted decades. A successful marriage was one that lasted until death. But I'm realizing there's another way to measure value. By depth rather than length," Martha suggested. "Exactly. These past months with you have been deeper, more meaningful than some entire decades of my life. It's not about how long we get, but how fully we live the time we have." This insight transformed how they approached their remaining days together. Rather than mourning the future they wouldn't have, they focused intensely on the present they were sharing. Each moment became an opportunity for depth rather than a reminder of brevity. The third lesson became clear during Robert's final week, when he was moved to hospice care. Martha had been staying in his home, but now she moved into the hospice facility, sleeping on a cot beside his bed. One night, as she adjusted his pillows, Robert looked at her with unusual clarity, the pain medications having created a brief window of lucidity. "I need to tell you something important," he said. "Something I've been thinking about for weeks." Martha sat on the edge of his bed, taking his hand. "I'm listening. When I got my diagnosis, my first instinct was to protect you by pushing you away," he began. "I thought loving me would only hurt you. But I was wrong about something fundamental." Martha waited, sensing the significance of what was coming. "I was seeing love as something that happens to you, something that, if you're not careful, can wound you. But that's not what love is." He paused, gathering strength. "Love isn't what happens to you. It's what you do. It's active, not passive." "An ongoing choice," Martha suggested. "Yes, and your choice to love me through this, knowing exactly what was coming. It's the greatest gift I've ever received. Not because you were willing to suffer for me, but because you were willing to choose me, choose us, every single day, despite what was ahead." This final insight was perhaps the most profound, that love in later years isn't about ignoring the reality of loss, but about embracing it as part of love's full expression. It requires accepting vulnerability not as a weakness to be avoided, but as the very channel through which the deepest connection flows. In his final days, Robert drifted in and out of consciousness, but Martha remained constantly at his side. She read to him, played his favorite jazz records on a small portable player, and kept up a gentle monologue of memories and observations. When his children visited, she stepped out to give them private time, then returned to resume her vigil. On a quiet Sunday morning in September, just as dawn light began filtering through the hospice window, Robert opened his eyes with unexpected clarity. Martha, dozing in the chair beside him, felt his fingers twitch against hers and immediately leaned forward. "Martha," he whispered, "thank you for making the end of my life its own kind of beginning." Those were his last coherent words. 3 hours later, with Martha and his eldest daughter holding his hands, Robert took his final breath and was gone. In the stillness that followed, as medical staff moved quietly around them and grief settled like a heavy blanket, Martha felt the full weight of her loss. Yet alongside the pain was something unexpected, a profound sense of gratitude for the brief, luminous connection they had shared. I would do it all again, she told Robert's children later that day as they gathered in the hospice family room. Every moment, knowing exactly how it would end. That's what I want you to understand and remember about your father. He was worth every tear. In the months that followed, as Martha navigated grief once again, she found that this time was different. Not easier necessarily, but somehow more integrated into her understanding of life's fullness. The lessons she and Robert had discovered together became touchstones, not just for processing her loss, but for living whatever years remained to her with greater intentionality and depth. People keep asking if I regret opening my heart only to lose him so quickly, Martha told her support group 3 months after Robert's passing. They can't seem to understand when I say no. But the truth is, Robert and I packed more honest living into those 8 months than many couples manage in decades. We didn't have time for pretense or avoidance or taking each other for granted. She paused, looking around the circle of faces. Men and women in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, all navigating loss in their own ways. What I've learned is that love at our age isn't about safety. It's about courage. It's not about how long it lasts, but how deeply it transforms us. And it's not about protecting ourselves from pain, but about choosing connection, even knowing that loss is inevitable. Martha straightened in her chair, a quiet dignity in her posture, despite her still fresh grief. Robert used to say that young people fall in love, hoping it will last forever. But at our age, we love knowing full well it can't. And that's what makes it precious beyond measure. Love in our later years isn't about endless horizons or decades of plans. It's about the courage to embrace today, knowing tomorrow is uncertain. Martha and Robert's story reminds us that age doesn't diminish our capacity for connection. It deepens it, stripping away pretense and leaving only what truly matters. Their 8 months together held more authenticity, more raw beauty, than many relationships that span decades. The wisdom they discovered applies to all of us, regardless of our age. Love isn't valuable because it lasts. It's valuable because of how it transforms us while we have it. The courage to open our hearts despite guaranteed loss isn't foolishness. It's perhaps the purest form of wisdom. As Martha said, at our age, we're old enough to know that pain is part of love and wise enough to choose both. When faced with life's most difficult phone calls, the diagnosis, the loss, the unexpected ending, the question isn't whether we can avoid pain. The question is whether we'll allow that pain to prevent us from experiencing a profound connection. Martha chose connection. Robert chose vulnerability. Together, they discovered that even love with a known expiration date can become an immortal lesson in living fully. If you're hesitating to open your heart again at 60, 70, or beyond, or if you know someone who believes their chance for meaningful connection has passed, share this video as a gentle reminder. It's never too late to choose courage over safety, depth over longevity, and love over fear. Has someone's late-in-life love story touched your heart? Share your experience in the comments below.